I did get it done, though, because I'm about to preach it. There. If you'll open up your Bibles to the book of Genesis, we will go in that particular direction. Today, we are we are looking at the end of Genesis chapter 35, and then we're looking at the entire chapter of Genesis 36, which means next week we start with Joseph. By the way, once we get to the Joseph story, we are already on our way to Egypt. Okay, it's already, it's like a slide right into Egypt right after that. But we learned some things along the way as we are moving with Israel toward Egypt. Okay, so we'll get into that next week. So today we are looking at Genesis 35, verse 22 through chapter 36, verse 43. And it's just called preparing the stage. And the reason for that simply is we're about to head to Egypt. And so there's some odds and ends that need to be pulled together before we get there, so that especially the people to whom Moses is writing, many years later, 400 years later, are cognizant of how the geopolitical situation in the land of Canaan all came together and where all the brothers and sisters and everyone are that were around. Okay, it's part of the reason the book of Genesis was written. So, preparing the stage. Preparing the stage for what? Preparing the stage not only for the Israelites to go to Egypt, but for when they come back 400 years later. So, if you have your favorite translation with you today, that'd be really wonderful. If you don't, that's also okay. I'm projecting what will eventually be the New Charismatic Bible, the Old Testament, or at least the book of Genesis. So, it starts out. It happened that while Israel was living in that land, Reuben went up and had sexual relations with Bilhah, his father's concubine. Israel heard the report about it, and that's the end of that story. However, there were 12 sons of Jacob, the sons of Leah, Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, the servants of Rachel, Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, the servant of Leah, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob, which were born to him in Paddan Aram. And y'all know, you say, wait a minute, Benjamin wasn't born in Paddan Aram. No, he wasn't. Rachel died in childbirth in the land of Canaan with Benjamin, but they didn't make that exception here. They know everyone knows that. So anyway, that's Genesis 35, 22 to 26, and I'm taking the bottom part of the verses out because that's all it does is say where the sons all fit. And so I just put it in this format so it's a lot easier to follow. You got Leah with Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. You got Rachel with Joseph and Benjamin, Bilhah with Dan and Naphtali, and Zilpah with Gad and Asher. Okay, so let's just see how the kids are all connected. And Reuben was the firstborn. Reuben was the one who rightfully, if you follow the normal way things were done, should have got the birthright or the rights of the firstborn. And those rights of the firstborn came with a double portion of the blessing. In other words, if there's 12 kids, it's divided into 13 parts, and he gets 2 of them. Okay, that's the double portion. And then he also gets the leadership responsibilities for the clan. Now, as we're going to see in chapter 37, it was becoming very clear from the beginning, including with the multicolored coat, that Jacob was going to give those rights to someone else. His name was Joseph. His primary wife, the chief wife, the matriarch of the clan who had now passed away, and it was pretty obvious that Joseph was the one who was going to get the rights of the firstborn, and that would normally include the double portion and blessing, but also the leadership of the clan. So let's look at the way the kids were. I mean, this is going on in the family. You understand how this happens around families. I mean, it's who's going to do this and do that and everything. So anyway, Simeon and Levi, who are sons of Leah, are already disqualified from everything. Why are they disqualified from everything? Because of the fact that they had destroyed the city of Shechem in vengeance, killed many innocent people, and then plundered the whole city and brought a stench on Jacob, and God had to protect him as they fled. He had to put fear on the area inhabitants so that they would not be destroyed. At least that was Jacob's fear, that they would be destroyed. So Simeon and Levi are gone. Now here, quick, I want to say, this all happened, by the way, it says in the land, Hebron. Okay? That's where they are right now. They're in Hebron. They had gotten beyond the Tower of Migdal or something like that, and just around the area of Hebron. By the way, Edom's going to play in a big part today. You'll notice it's southeast of the Dead Sea, and it's just showing you where Edom is. We're going to get to it. I'm not going to show the map again. But Hebron is where all this stuff took place. So Simeon and Levi are out. Levi is later on given a redemptive position by God because of how Levi responded. The tribe responded to a crisis in when they had come out of Egypt. And so Levi gets in a position where it is not owning any portion of the land, but they're spread throughout the land, and they have the priesthood and the Levitical helpers around the temple. So now you've got Reuben, and he's looking around. He's noticing Joseph is the one who looks like he's about to get the right of firstborn. And so Reuben makes a decision, and the decision is, I am going to take over the clan. That's what this is about. He's taken over the clan. This is his attempt to do a coup and to already take over leadership of the clan. You say, what are you talking about? Well, remember when King Saul dies, David becomes king in Hebron, same place, over Judah and Benjamin. Or not Benjamin, but over Judah, and then some of the areas around there. And so he becomes the leader or the king for 7 years in Hebron, but Ishbosheth is king, King Saul's son, is king of the northern tribes yet. And at one point, Abner comes to him, and Ishbosheth said, I heard you slept with Saul's concubine, my dad's concubine. Now, he wasn't saying bad Abner because you committed a moral error. What he was saying is, Abner, you're trying to take the kingship from me. Because to take the former king's wife or concubine is a way to establish your position. You're taking that relationship, and it was a clear statement saying, I am now launching out as the king. Now, Abner says, I didn't do it. He really gets upset, and that's when he wants to take the rest of Israel over to David because of this false accusation. But that's why Ishbosheth was so upset. Obviously, it's also what Absalom did when he was trying to take the kingdom away from David. He sleeps with his concubines in front of all Israel because he's, number one, to make himself a stench to his father, but also to say, I am taking his position. This was the normal way things worked. When David became king of the entire nation of Israel, we learn later God said this to him when he was talking about what had happened with Bathsheba. He said, I put your master's wives into your arms. David, to solidify his rule of the entire nation, took Saul's wives as his. That's the way the culture worked. Remember when David did not quickly move to put Solomon into the position of king, and Adonijah decided he's going to be king because he was the oldest when Absalom and Amnon both died? We won't get into that story. Anyway, they're both gone. So Adonijah is the one who is next in line, and so he decides, I know that my dad is going to do, put Solomon in position, but he tries to do the same thing, but he doesn't sleep with any of David's. He just tries to become king. And so anyway, that's stopped. Solomon becomes king. There had been one of David's concubines named Abishag. He had never slept with her. That's clear. It says it in the Bible. But he could no longer keep his body heat, so she had one job. It was to sleep with him at night and not to have intimacy, but to keep him warm. Okay, but she had been one of his concubines. And so Adonijah, after this coup is put down by Solomon, and Solomon says, just live righteously, you'll be fine. Adonijah tries to marry Abishag. Comes to Bathsheba, says, ask Solomon to give me your hand in marriage. And Solomon goes, he's the eldest, what more can I give him but the kingdom? If he gave his dad's concubine to Adonijah, that would give him rights to the kingdom. And so Adonijah died. Was executed as a result because he was trying to put together a coup. This is exactly what's going on when you have Reuben having a relationship with Bilhah. It's not just a sexual escapade. It is an attempt to take over the clan. And Jacob looks pretty weak to the people who are in the clan because of the fact that when Dinah was abducted and compromised by Shechem, he said nothing. And so right now there was a whole lot of dissatisfaction, I'm certain, with whether Jacob was still up to the job. Reuben thought that he would take advantage of it, and he attempts to take over the clan. That's what's going on here. How well did it work out for Reuben? Not so much. Backfired disastrously. In 1 Chronicles 5:1, we're told, the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was firstborn, but he defiled his father's bed, and his rights of the firstborn were given to the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel. He is not enrolled in this genealogical list as firstborn. So it wasn't just position, it was rights of firstborn that were being talked about. And in 1 Chronicles, we're told Reuben is out. Lost it right there because of what he did. He thought he was going to gain power. He lost everything. And it says it went to Joseph. He's the one that forced it in that direction. That was, his plans didn't work out real well. And then in the very next verse, now normally, like I said, the double portion blessing and the leadership goes to the same person who's firstborn, the rights of firstborn. However, in verse 2 of 1 Chronicles 5, we read this, except Judah gained the victory over his brothers and the leadership fell to him, yet the rights of firstborn were Joseph's. So Judah got the leadership, but Joseph got the double portion. Have you ever wondered where Ephraim and Manasseh both were able to step in to the line? That was Joseph's double portion. He had two tribes, even though he was only one. But he got the double portion. And so Ephraim and Manasseh were the ones who were, stepped into the line. So all of this, it's a sordid little tale, but it is the way it worked. And it was about positioning and about Reuben's attempt to take over the clan. And so that's a thing that we need to know about, because later on we're going to get to Genesis 49 and Jacob's going to prophesy over his kids, and he's not telling Reuben Reuben's done. And we're told it in advance why. So we're ready. It's setting the stage for what's coming in the rest of the book. So now we are in the last verses of chapter 35. Jacob met his father Isaac in Mamre, near Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had lived for a time. The days of Isaac were 180 years. Then Isaac breathed his last breath and died and was taken away to his people. He was an old man and content with his days. His sons Esau and Jacob buried him. So this is a picture of how when Isaac passed. And by the way, Abraham lived till 175. So Isaac outlived him by 5 years. Very interesting, just the way it is. They both lived very, very long lives. And we have Jacob and Isaac reunite in Hebron. And Esau also shows up. But remember what Jacob had said to God when he left, when he was at Bethel and God met him, when he had fled from Esau. He had said, it says then Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and he will watch over me on this road that I am walking and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, and I will return in peace to the house of my father, and Yahweh will be my God, then he gives his oath, right? But this is the point. He understood God to be saying, you're going to return safely to the house of your father. And now he was there. He had come back. Rachel died on the way, but he was back in Hebron with Isaac. And it is also apparent, and we'll hear that a little bit more clearly later, that Esau moves back from Seir. Remember when Esau and Jacob met, Esau says, hey, let's go back to Seir together. And Jacob says, that goes somewhere else. But they've all visited, you understand. They were in the same neighborhood, relatively speaking. Eventually, Jacob moved, not just to visit Isaac, but to be with him. And Esau also moved to be there with Jacob and Isaac. And so they were together at the death of Isaac. So Jacob and Isaac reunite. Esau shows up on the scene. Isaac lived till 180 years old. What that tells us is that Joseph was 30 years old and he was already entering Pharaoh's service by the time that Isaac died. Okay, this is not chronological in the sense of, here's this happened, this happened, this happened. It's jumping ahead and setting the stage. It's getting rid of the details. It would wreck the flow of the narrative if in the middle of the flow of the narrative and said, by the way, back in Canaan, Isaac died, and Esau, it would stop that. And so the narrator, the writer, Moses, but through the Holy Spirit, is clearing the stage so we can get right into the Joseph story and head down to Egypt with everything that's going to happen. And so he's tying up loose ends. But that means Isaac suffered through the loss of Joseph. And he was deceived just as Jacob was deceived when they were told that Joseph had been killed by wild animals. That's coming. You know, when Isaac breathed his last, he opened up his eyes in heaven and says, hey, can I, or in the place of the dead, the Abraham's bosom. And he says, so, I'd like to see Joseph. And they said, he's not here. And he's like, what? You mean those rascals lied to me? See, he's in heaven. He's only going to say rascals. Okay? He's not going to say anything more derogatory. But, so anyway, by the time he dies, Joseph's 30 years old. He was 17 at the initiation of this story, so you understand a lot of years had passed between the time he had disappeared. So he was 180 years old. Joseph was already in Egypt. Esau and Jacob honored their father by burying him. And we got these scriptures which help us understand. It says, then after this, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah near Mamre, that is Hebron in the land of Canaan. That's in Genesis 23. And then in Genesis 25, then Isaac and Ishmael, his sons, buried Abraham in the cave of Machpelah in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, near Mamre. So that's, again, same place. Sarah and Abraham were buried in the same place. Now Isaac was buried there, and Jacob would be buried there. They would bring his body out of Egypt and bury him in the same cave, at the cave of Machpelah, the same field. And so just so we know, he got buried with his father and his mother in that particular cave, which at that point was their only possession in the entire land of Canaan. So Esau and Jacob honored their father. Now, we're going to turn to Esau. By the way, it becomes very clear throughout this entire section how many times we're told that we're not really talking about Esau anymore, we're talking about Edom. They're synonymous. And the purpose is, and that's why I showed you the map, is to show what was going on in Edom during the entire time that Jacob lived in the land and for the 400 years he was away in Egypt. 430 years he was away in Egypt. So, in fact, a little bit longer than that because it was 40 years in the wilderness. So, this is the book of the histories of Esau, that is Edom, and his descendants. Esau took his wives from the daughters of Canaan. That's what got him in trouble with mom and dad. Ada, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, Aholibama, daughter of Anna, the daughter of Zibeon the Horite, and Basemath, daughter of Ishmael, the sister of Nebaioth. Ada gave birth to Eliphaz for Esau. Basemath gave birth to Reuel, and Aholibama gave birth to Jush, Jalem, and Korah. These are the sons of Esau, which were born to him in the land of Canaan. Esau took his wives, his sons, his daughters, all the souls of his house, his livestock, all his animals, and all his possessions, which he had obtained in the land of Canaan, and he traveled to a land away from the presence of his brother Jacob, for their belongings were too considerable for them to live together. The land they lived in for a time was not able to provide for them because of their livestock. Then Esau lived in the hill country of Seir. Esau is Edom. So now we learn that they lived together side by side in the area of Hebron while Isaac was alive. That's that gets your mind shifting. That's how much peace was established between Esau and Jacob. Until finally, they just couldn't, there was just too much going on, and Esau was very familiar with Seir, which is what Edom was originally. It was the mountains or the hill country of Seir, and that became Edom. He moved there because by the way, it means he left the land of promise. But you understand, that wasn't significant. He isn't the one who now was bearing that promise. It was Jacob. Jacob had taken that birthright from Esau, so it was probably best we don't talk about that. I'll just go down to Seir and live there because that way we can, we won't be in each other's way. By the way, this is almost a repeat of Abraham and Lot, isn't it? Okay, it's basically the same thing, but Esau doesn't take the best land. He just says, I'm going to Seir. And he had been there before, and that's where he had come from when he first met Jacob. And so it's an area he was very familiar with, and certainly had some relationship there, which will be seen in a moment. So anyway, this is, by the way, the Toledoth. If you remember all the way back to Genesis 5, where we start with the Toledoths, the subsequent history. Genesis divided into Toledoths. And that's the Hebrew word, and generally translated something like, the subsequent history or the history of. And so this is all about Esau, which we are involved in. By the way, why is Esau important? Why is Edom important to the Israelites? Because this is what Obadiah 21 says. Rescuers will go up on Mount Zion to deliver the mountain of Esau, and the kingdom will belong to Yahweh. Okay? The shouldn't be there, of course, but belong to Yahweh. I still, when I'm translating, will be tempted to translate the Tetragrammaton, the Lord, or something like that. So I'll put in that, and then I go, no, it's Yahweh. And sometimes I leave the article. But anyway, so this is a promise about Edom, that Edom is going to find restoration in the Lord. It did become part of David's kingdom when it was under his protection. And then it wasn't like a friendly relationship by any stretch, especially in the time of Solomon and beyond. And Edom became an enemy of Israel, especially during the time when Israel was being deported, and there was some very difficult things that they did to take advantage of the Israelites as they were deported. But there's promises for Edom, which is why we are being told about Edom. This is why Esau is important. We're eventually going to see a time where Esau's descendants are brought in to the Lord. And, Yahweh is his personal name, so we won't get into that much. But apparently, he moved back to Hebron at a point, and that's important. And his motive for moving permanently to Seir is that he needed to have room. This is the book of the histories of the descendants of Esau, father of the Edomites in the hill country of Seir. These are the names of the sons of Esau: Eliphaz, the son of Esau's wife, Adah, and Reuel, the son of Esau's wife, Basemath. The sons of Eliphaz were Taman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz. Timnah was a concubine of Esau's sons Eliphaz. She gave birth to Amalek for Eliphaz. These are the sons of Esau's wife, Adah. These are the sons of Reuel: Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. These were the sons of Esau's wife, Basemath. These are not easy names to pronounce, by the way. I just want to point that out. These are the sons of Esau's wife, Aholibamah. I wonder what her nickname was, because they didn't say that every time. Daughter of Anna, daughter of Zibeon. She gave birth to Jeush, Jalam, and Korah for Esau. These are the tribal leaders of the sons of Esau. The sons of Eliphaz, the firstborn of Esau, are Chief Teman, Chief Omar, Chief Zepho, Chief Kenaz, Chief Korah, Chief Gatam, and Chief Amalek. These are the tribal leaders from Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Adah. These are the sons of Esau's sons: Reuel, Chief Nahath, Chief Zerah, Chief Shammah, and Chief Mizah. These are the tribal leaders from Reuel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Esau's wife, Basemath. These are the sons of Esau's wife, Aholibamah. Do you think there's some repetition going on? Yes. Chief Jeush, Chief Jalam, and Chief Korah. These are the tribal leaders from Esau's wife, Aholibamah, the daughter of Anna. These are the sons of Esau. That is Edom. And notice, that is Edom. And these are the tribal leaders. So we first hear who the kids are, then we hear which ones of them became tribal leaders. Not all, by the way, but you have to compare it, and I didn't bother to write it down. But most of them show up again. So this is just establishing the history of Esau's line. Why is this important? Because the people of Israel, after 400 years in Egypt, wouldn't have a clue who was who in the zoo. And they needed to know the history of what had gone on in Edom, because they were closely related. They were the sons of Israel, and these were the sons of Esau. That's how close they were. And so they needed to understand who the Edomites were, and that they were close relatives from the time of Jacob, who they were named after, the sons of Israel. And so we are being given a little bit of an insight to the structure and the government of this place. However, it wasn't just Esau at first. There was also the guys who lived there before. It says, these are the sons of Seir the Horite, those who were living in the land: Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anna, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishon. You can hear the names repeat because there's some intermarriage going on. These are the tribal leaders of the Horites. By the way, the Horites, that could be a word that means cave. So they were living in caves. The sons of Seir in the land of Edom. The sons of Lotan are Hori and Heman. Lotan's sister was Timnah. These are the sons of Shobal, Elvan, and Manahath, Ebal, Shepho, and Onam. These are the sons of Zibeon, Ai, and Anna. He is the Anna who discovered the springs in the wasteland while he was tending donkeys for Zibeon, his father. These are the sons of Anna. Dishon, also Aholibamah, daughter of Anna. These are the sons of Dishon: Hemdan, Eshban, Ithron, and Cheran. These are the sons of Ezer: Bilhan, Zaavan, and Achan. These are the sons of Dishon: Uz and Aran. These are the tribal leaders from the Horites. Now we've got tribal leaders. These are the guys that made the grade: Chief Lotan, Chief Shobal, Chief Zibeon, Chief Anna, Chief Dishon, Chief Ezer, and Chief Dishon. Do you like Dishon and Dishon? Now, you would have said Dishon a little. It would have been Dishon probably, and then Dishon. These are the tribal leaders from the Horites. They're tribal leaders in the land of Seir. Now, so we know that there was, Edom was there, and then there were the Horites, the cave dwellers, is what most scholars are understanding. And if you've looked at that land, you understand there's a lot of caves there. And that didn't mean they lived in caves all the time, but it certainly, they got their name from the fact they at least started there. And so Edom was not just Esau at first. In Deuteronomy 2:12, we're told that the Edomites eventually drove the people of Seir out of Edom. Just like the Israelites drove the Canaanites out, the Edomites drove the people of Seir out. Even though there was some interrelationship and marriage, they eventually took over the whole land. And as a result, it was no longer known as Seir. It was known completely as Edom. By the way, the reason that the springs were important and whatever his name, Anna, got famous was because of the fact that you find water in a wasteland, that's gold. And that made habitation possible. Because if you didn't have water, you didn't live there. Where were cities established? Always where there was water. Always where there were springs. Always where there were wells. Again, same thing here. That wilderness, some areas of that wilderness would have been uninhabitable without the water, which he found, which made him famous. And so everyone knew what he had done. And then, these are the kings who ruled in the land of Edom before the reign of a king among the sons of Israel. Again, we're being told the history. This is before any king was in Israel, what was going on. And that meant through the period of the judges too. And so it was Bela, the son of Beor, ruled in Edom. The name of his city was Dinhaba. When Bela died, Jobab, the son of Zerah from Bozrah, ruled in his place. When Jobab died, Husham from the land of the Temanites ruled in his place. When Husham died, Hadad, the son of Bedad, the one who routed Midian in the field of Moab, ruled in his place. The name of his city was Avith. When Hadad died, Samlah of Masrekah ruled in his place. When Samlah died, Shaul from Rehoboth on the river ruled in his place. When Shaul died, Baal-Hanan, the son of Achbor, ruled in his place. And when Baal-Hanan, the son of Achbor, died, Hadar ruled in his place. The name of his city was Pau. The name of his wife was Mehetabel, the daughter of Matred, daughter of Mezahab. By the way, Hadar may have come all the way down to the time of Saul. That, we may have gotten the history Solomon. We may have gotten the history all the way down to there through this list. So, Edom's history as a nation precedes Israel's history, without a doubt. Israel didn't have any kings for a long time. And so what's being established, honestly, is a little bit of respect for Edom. You guys, that's one of the reasons Israel would have wanted a king. Eventually, it's like, everyone's got a king. Edom's got a king. We need a king too. And that's got them in trouble with the Lord and with Samuel. But it was the Lord's will that they do have a king. There were regulations from the king in the Mosaic Code. It's just that their request was too early. David was supposed to be their first king. And they said, no, we'll take a king from, and it was the Lord, but you can imagine when they heard he was a Benjamite, they thought, well, that makes sense, one of Rachel's kids, And then Saul turned out to be a mess, and so ended up going to Judah's line. So this was all to, again, set the stage for the people of Israel. And finally, the last verses. By the way, when you're preaching through a book of the Bible, it's good to read through the genealogies because of the fact that there are little tidbits in it. And so I'm going to apply this in just a minute. Your job is to stay awake. My job is to read with passion. Okay? These are the names of the tribal rulers of Esau according to their extended families, according to their locales, by their names. Chief Timnah, Chief Alva, Chief Jetheth, Chief Aholibama, Chief Elah, Chief Pinon, Chief Kenaz, Chief Teman, Chief Mibzar, Chief Magdiel, and Chief Iram. These are the tribal leaders of Edom. That is Esau, the father of Edom. There's that again. Hey, don't forget, we're talking about Edom. According to their dwelling places in the land of their possession. We did it. We got through. So Israel was obviously not to forget Edom's history because they were going to be living as next door neighbors, and they needed to understand why God was saying don't harm them, unless they got into warfare because they were attacked. So we've gotten through. We're setting the stage. We took care of what happened, why Reuben was not the one who would get the birthright blessing. By the end of the book of Genesis, we see Jacob blessing Ephraim and Manasseh, giving them the double portion blessing for Joseph. And so this is setting the stage so that we understand why that happened. When Jacob prophesies over them at the end, it's obvious the scepter will not depart from Judah. It's that he's getting the leadership. And so then the whole situation with Edom was brought in. Now, we've taken care of all that. That's all in the past. And thank God we don't have another chapter like this before we get to the end of the book of Genesis. By the way, if I continue in the book of Exodus, we probably won't be going through the Mosaic Code. We'll just be doing the stories. And Scott goes, what? Yeah, I know you want to all know about how exactly the dimensions of the tabernacle were built and all of the ceremonies and the sacrifices. Because it applies so much to your lives each and every day. There are some broad things you can draw from those sacrifices, and they do prophesy until today, but it's not usually riveting study. So, anyway, I got one what, and I got one thank you, so we're good. Anyway, what I want you to take from this today, besides the fact that the stage was being set and God's really dotting his I's and crossing his T's and helping us, is that when you step into the presence of the Lord one day, your history is going to be written. You're going to see the history of your family line like this, where you fit in the family line. You see, I believe that one of the things, I don't think there's any question about this, but how do we understand God's grace? We see his grace worked out in the life of every human being who ever lived on the face of this earth, who was redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, who ends up in the presence of the Lord. And I believe that one of the things we are going to be doing throughout eternity is going through each other's family lines, that it's going to be like one of those things that we learn. Now, by the way, here's something that occurred to me. I suspect that we will know the name of everyone that is with us in the new heaven and the new earth, and their histories, and how God's grace was in their lives. Because we're going to have our minds restored, okay? Remember, what Adam was able to do is look at the animals and name them all to understand and remember the names that he gave them. Was that the giraffe again, or was that the zebra? I don't quite remember, but okay. And so I believe we're going to know the name that we have from God, because we have a name from God. And I believe that everyone's names, we're going to know them all. And we're going to know them by sight. And we're going to know their history. And we're going to discover their history as the Lord shares it with us as part of our way of understanding how his grace worked out through history. And we're going to become more and more. When you look at this, when you see Reuben in heaven and you realize, wow, that was pretty sordid, Reuben. And yet he's there by the grace of God. He's there by the blood of the Lamb. I mean, it's just, and there's, and then Reuben's going to go, hey, I know about your life too. And we're all going to be going, thank God for the blood of the Lamb. And so when I'm looking at these genealogies, I'm thinking people are important to God. And not just the people, but their histories and their interconnectedness. And the way how God is working in all of our lives. Literally, when we are in the new heaven and the new earth, we're going to see how our history's interconnected. During this time that we are walking on earth, and we've done a little bit more than just find some springs in the wilderness. There's things that God has done and allowed us to do that are going to be those things which are just as cool as him, Anna finding the springs in the wilderness. Because God's given us the ability to find springs in our wilderness. And that is going to be one of those things that we're able to do, which is really cool. Anyway, we got through the final major genealogy of Esau anyway in the book of Genesis. And I noticed most of you stayed awake, which was good. I'll talk to those of you that fell asleep later. I'm joking. I didn't see anyone sleeping. I get too involved in the story. So anyway, Lord, thank you for this opportunity today for us to be able to grow in our understanding of how you set things up or responded to things that were happening, so that in this section of Scripture, we are prepared for what is coming in the life of Joseph and beyond. I ask that we would continue to be enthralled by everything that you did in history, just as we are enthralled by what you are doing in our lives today. In your name, amen.